There we go. We got audio from that, and we got audio from that. And we are streaming. Okay. So let me go back to screen and tell me if you guys can hear me. Mare, can you hear me okay? Can you guys hear me? It takes a moment before whatever I say comes into screen, so let me know, and then we can get talking about all that. Hello, hello, hello. Let's give everybody a moment to get in to make sure you guys can hear me. All right, Mare can hear me. Fantastic. So the mic is working. Camera seems to be working. I gotta sit up straight. Oh my God. Do not sit up straight usually. And then I think we're almost ready. I'm gonna give this just a moment. We're recording so we can cut this up later into stuff for you. Today we want to talk about building the face. And so we're going to build the face, but we're going to build it from anatomy and from form concepts and from a construction approach. And so what I want to do right now is kick this off and start to talk a little bit about the course so that you get a sense of what we are doing. So right here at kingslien.art, this is got 2 more days for registration for enrollment. Let me go ahead and check out the products for you. So I'm going to bring in the courses themselves, so what you get access to when you sign up. All right, so this is all created for you, pre-recorded for you. Let me bring in the head first, and then I'll bring that guy in later. There we go. Okay. All right. So when we get in and we start to talk about the human head, we need to really, right off the bat, talk about the skull. And we need to talk about the skull in a way that's going to give us, let's go ahead and turn volume off. It's going to give us the ability to see some of the complexity that's on the left-hand side. That's the actual scan. Not sculpt all of that complexity, but start to abstract that out into essentialized shapes and landmarks that are going to empower our imaginative capacity. Okay? So when we come in, the way I like to teach these things is right off the bat, you create écorché. And this écorché, this part of the écorché is really cool for me anyways. You create the inner structure of the eye. So you create the raphe, you create the tarsal plates, and then you go in and you create the actual muscles, and you start to get the muscles placed in with each other. Depressor supercilii lining up with the orbicularis oris. You go in and you digitally dissect what another sculptor has done. And in that case, we use tissue depth markers and see, you know, if you were to put the muscles underneath what they did, would it work, right? And this, like, that's great. That lesson we just saw right there. See how long that medial raphe is? Medial palpebral ligament. It's just super long. All right, and then we go through and we have a series of exercises where we take casts from the ancients and we copy them to master the process. And we do this using a mix of constructive and traditional methodologies. Right now I'm actually using a traditional methodology where we establish the contour. And from the contour, we build other contours, their eyelids, the rest of those going out, and then eventually get our figure together. All right, and so that continues for the nose, the mouth, fat pads. We're actually today going to look down here at the bottom. You see constructing a female head. We're going to look at the foundation of that today. I'm going to show you the models that resulted from that, and it just needs audio and editing now. There's one course you get, and that's just Anatomy for Artists. You buy one thing, you enroll in one thing, and then you get 4 courses. So this is one, this is another. And in here, let's say, take a look at the obliques. You're doing a similar thing that we talked about, where you first make an écorché. So you're actually sculpting the elements. Then you're drawing those elements and identifying them on scan data, which is super cool. And then I'm going to skip to this one. This is the lower back. There's so much for the lower back. We have to talk about form concepts for the erector spinae. It troubled me nonstop trying to figure out how to teach this. So I just basically taught everything. Teach the form concepts for the erector spinae, come down, and then create all the individual muscles. Now, let's do sculpting the lower back. Okay. So now we're getting in, and in the anatomy of the, for artists, the torso section, the last exercise component that you do is you get in and sculpt. And so I teach you guys to sculpt the way I like to sculpt, which has a lot of structure to it, and it's just blocky, right? This is just me learning. I've learned some from a sculptor named Richard McDonald, and on from there. This is a way to have a lot more dynamicism and power to your work, right? And here I am coming in with a particular process where I just take a knife tool to it, and then once I've taken the knife tool to it, I'll come back over that with the clay brush to just give myself a little bit more of a planar and offset edges, and start to make more offsets and more dynamic surface that eventually you see coming in here. And this is the way I love to sculpt. Really structural, really just, emphasizing movement throughout the whole thing. Okay, so that's the courses, all right? And there's 2 days. It closes Sunday night. Monday, I am on a plane to Rome, so there won't be any email after that to be like, here's the next thing. We're just going to close this down until we open again when I feel like we're ready, based on how many people are in and all that stuff, and if I can accommodate everybody in Discord and everybody learning it. Okay? Any questions? Shall we get in and sculpt? As I do this, I want you guys to tell me, what is one of the number one problems that you have sculpting the features of the face, sculpting the eyes? I want you to think, not just like, hey, I can't sculpt eyes. I want you to start to think, what's giving me trouble? What part of it is giving me trouble? Okay, because one of the key tenets I have is that mastery is not magic, it's process. And my job is to discover processes that masters use and give them to you so that you can get them and you can sublimate them and build them into your toolkit, right? There's the saying, they attribute it to the Marines, but it goes back to the Greeks. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's one of the founding principles of deep practice. And that's a word, you can Google that. There's some fantastic people talking about this. Daniel Coyle being the main one, talking about how important deep practice is for mastery of stuff like what we're doing here with skills. This course is built around the idea of deep practice, meaning do these steps, go back, make sure, and through the videos, I get to points in the video where I'm like, don't stop. If your model does not look like this, then you need to, not don't stop. Basically, let me re-say that. There's going to be a point in some of these videos where I say, okay, if your model doesn't look like this, you need to stop and you need to either fix it or you need to start over. and just try to get it in one smooth movement so that your sculpting is almost as smooth as my sculpting. Smooth is fast, okay? And slow is smooth. So you got to go through these steps slowly, methodically, with intention. And, of course, sometimes you got to muscle through. You're in production and you just got to figure it out. But we're not in production here. We're learning a craft that, frankly, they could do better than a lot of us 2,500 years ago. They were amazing back then. We're picking it back up now. And so in order for us to master this ancient craft, I feel we need to stop monkeying around and we need to get in and figure out, this is the step I want to focus on. This is the next step. And try to identify each one of those steps in the process that eventually leads to a beautiful result. Not just, can I get lucky today, right? You ever had that where it's like, this is you create something awesome, but you don't know how. And that's ultimately how it works at the end. But you want to have a solid foundation so that no matter what, you're sculpting something great. Let's say you're sculpting something good, but then every now and then you get lucky and you sculpt something great, right? Let's make sure we've got that solid foundation so that those awesome days take us that much higher. And that's all about process. Okay, so I'm going to check in on comments here. And the most important thing for you guys, ask your questions, get them out, and then I'm going to just get in and start building and talking about the anatomy of the face. Hey, Carl, nice to meet you. Spicer, how are you? Absolutely, my friend. I live so close to you, and I never get to see you, but it's been crazy busy. And these courses are like so much work. This course right here, guys, the Anatomy of Artists, this is like 63 lectures in this. And there's 30 planned. There's already 20. And then there's 30 planned for this. And then there's the arm and all of that other stuff. Okay, good. Let me make sure I don't have anything streaming. Turn that off. Let's get ourselves into our model. So this is the model that I'm building ultimately for this course. So there's a lot more content to build for it. And then if we go into ZBrush here, what we are looking at, let's go ahead and close out of that and turn perspective on, is I want you guys to have a process. And I want you to have a series of steps. Okay, let's take document. This is a little weird. New document. Double. Okay. This is what I consider to be a step one. And this is, in one of the lessons, this is what I end up sculpting and showing you guys. This is what I would consider a step two, right? I'm going to get these right next to each other. There's 10 steps. And so let's go ahead and push, and we're going to combine the nose and the mouth right now as one. And then there is the jaw. You can see a little bit of that development right in there. And then there is the brow. And I'm going to leave these guys right here. My goal as a teacher is always to find out the small movements that masters do so that I can explain it to you and to myself. I mean, honestly, the reason why I do a lot of this is because I'm the slowest learner on the planet. It takes me so long to learn stuff, and I have to learn it deeply. And when I learn it deeply, I learn it to the point where it's easy to explain to anybody. So that just became my job. This is the 5 volumes. You'll hear me refer to it as the 5 volumes, the 8 volumes. What we're talking about is that there is a forehead volume, there is a cranial volume, there is the maxilla volume, cheek volume, and then the jaw volume. And then the ear. So that's actually 6. So there's 6 volumes to the head. And this is the 5 volumes, the 4 volumes, all it comes from George Bridgman. After that, we get into the skull volume. And what you'll note about the skull volume is that it's basically the same as number 1, but I've now started to indicate some structural sense for the orbit of the eye, and I've now started to indicate the opening, the nasal opening of the nasal opening. What the hell else that could it be called? Jesus. And then what I do is I add the features on top of that. Okay, and so if I don't have a skull volume, I don't add features, right? And so this is the nose, and this is the mouth. All of this gets developed very, very quickly, right? And as well as all of this all gets developed real quickly, and then simple planes for the lips. Then we go in and we add the masseter mass, and we pull the temporalis down into that area. And then we come in and you see how much more developed the brow is. You know, here you just have one plane. But now over here on the brow, you've actually got multiple planes happening, right? And that's what we want. At every stage, we want to get more and more information. Sculpting, at the end of the day, is about solving problems. And these problems that we're solving is the relationship between parts. And we know how to do this, right? Furniture is a high-level concept. Chair is a part of furniture. But then chair is here, and underneath chair is a Victorian, it's a stool. There's a bunch of different stuff that's underneath chair as a concept. And so you have to build your library of form concepts. This is one of the most important things for me. When I heard this word, it came, I could feel it coming from a distance right at me. And I was like, this is it. This is the most important word that I'm going to learn this week. And I have, there's a guy named Anthony Visco that shared that word with me. And I've used that word in almost every class that I have taught related to sculpting. It's always form concepts. You're building a concept of what the face looks like. And so in the beginning, it's an egg with an oval. You know, it's an egg with a wedge, right? That's the Frank Riley that Proco talks a lot about. And then you just go down from there. And so I like to start at the 5 volumes, George Bridgman. And once you have that, then you go into the next form concept, which is the skull volume. Then you go into the nose, and you build the volumes for the nose. We talk about the Disney princess line of the nose. And then we're talking about the mouth. And the mouth is also the muzzle of the mouth. And the muzzle of the mouth, I don't know if you guys notice this, but notice how that mouth is going back. Let me go and share the screen. The muzzle of the mouth is going back. Notice how I have a muzzle here, but when I built the lips, this is the skeletal volume. When I built the lips, I added more volume on top. And that volume started to kind of flood the jaw. So we started to add. You can see the thickness is about right there. And then it comes down and it flows from the fat pads here, flows down along, and it picks up right with the maxilla. So you can see how the maxilla was flooded over by that cheek, that mass of the muzzle of the mouth and the lips. And so that's an important step for me, you know, because then I'll pull this back, and then I add the masseter mass on top of that. And those forms then set up the forms that I need to build later on. Everything is dependent on the next step. So if I come in and I show, let's go like that. I think that's going to be better so it doesn't interpenetrate. Now I've got the eyes. Actually, I don't have as many here. 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I can do it like this. That's the eyes. Now I've got cheek fat. And now I've got surface. So these are 9 stages. And in the beginning, if you think about these stages and you focus on developing your capacity within these stages, then you are going to be a stronger sculptor. So you can see all the more information that we have in the brow, right? But notice how I haven't really, I'm not messing with so much. And in fact, I'm actually leaving this form here. It was really hard to leave that form right there and not fill that in. But that form, it shows up here. And later on, I build that form. But if I am able to maintain these as separate stages, you'll notice that there's a little line right here. And you'll see this line in people that separates the bone from the fat. That line is the mid-cheek groove. Okay, mid-cheek groove. Now, if you Google mid-cheek groove, I actually don't know if you'll get something, because these aren't words that people really talk about unless they are talking about, let's say, plastic surgery, right? So you can see them talking a little bit here. Number 3 is the mid-cheek groove. Number 1 is the malar line. And so in plastic surgery, they have to sit and talk about, we're going to move this line. Yeah. Oh, you've got a very pronounced malar structure. So we're going to move the mid-cheek groove to give you a more youthful look, right? Because if you go under the knife, the chances of death are, they're there, right? So they need to sell it. And the plastic surgeons need to be able to talk amongst themselves and explain what they're doing and why they're doing and all that. So they have developed a language that we as sculptors can use for our benefit as well. And if you take nothing else out of this session today, just take the idea of going and researching plastic surgeon terminology. That's going to teach you a whole lot about the face that you might not have known. For example, the tip defining point, that's a plastic surgeon term. The facet is something that a plastic surgeon would put in. And they'd say, we're going to move the facet. We're going to refine the facet. And then they'll show a picture of Scarlett Johansson's nose, right? And then it'll be like, yes, that's what I want. I want exactly that. And there you go. Now you've got a patient. And now you know, I've got the facet moving procedure, the Kingslien facet moving procedure. All that different stuff. Grab their words. They're important. And so we see the mid-cheek groove. You see the mid-cheek groove, the mid-cheek groove, and the mid-cheek groove. Process is power. If you do things slowly and you keep these steps in your mind, then you won't accidentally go in and just be like, all right, well, I'm going to sculpt today, right? So it's like, I'm going to come in and something's wrong with my sculpt. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to kind of, yeah, there we go. Oh, I don't have symmetry on. Now you've done all that, and now you're looking at this and you're like, I don't know what happened, and I don't know why suddenly it's looking like Al Pacino. And what we've done is we've pushed back the plane, the volume of the zygomatic bone, and we have, from a top view, we've really established too strong of a mid-cheek groove. And we've just by not being cognizant of the steps and being mindful that this is an anatomical landmark that we need to cherish. That's a big part of what we want to achieve, right? And then on top of that, let's go backwards. just getting from these two forms, I think, is an important topic of conversation. You know, this is fat pads. So what I was focused on was just, well, let's look at our source and then where are the shadows, and I've just rearranged the fat pads to kind of fit our form. And then we've gone in and now we've been a much more judicious about what's happening down here. We've filled out the volume right in there. We've started to focus on how things curve, right? And started to get things a little bit more rounded, a little bit more contained, if you will. The brow right here, this gave me a lot of trouble to kind of figure out. Okay, but let's go back and look at something like this. Let's go here to there. Yeah. So you can see, you know, on the stage, I'm focused on bone. Okay. And now over here, I've already got the bone. So now my job is to go in and start to think about fat and start to think about how that moves and how that's going to arrange things. And notice the chin, it has this kind of teardrop shape right there. And that teardrop shape is flowing down underneath the massive fat pad here, the mass of the fat of this guy right here. You're also going to learn, you know, that a lot of these structures that we see here are related to an anatomical item you may not even know about. Do you have a sense of what causes this? Why do we have that divot right there? Let me know in the chat. Anybody have any thoughts on what causes that divot? Let's take a look and see. In this sculpt, you can barely see it because of the light. So let's get it here. Okay, this is the model that it's based off of. This is not a scan. This is based off some people and whatnot, but this was a digital avatar project I did a long time ago with some really amazing artists, and we didn't do anything with it. But if I throw, let's throw a little gray. Yeah. You can see we've got that form right there, right? So what's causing this divot right here? That's the thing that we want to try to understand. Let me go ahead. There we go. Let's hide that head and keep your eye right here. I hope I have it. If I don't, I'll show it to you on the other side, but keep your eye right there. There's going to be an anatomical element right there. It's a little bit too far back. So I've got to move that forward a little bit. No, that's not the one. Where's the retaining ligaments? Good God. All right, 1 second. Stop moving. Retaining ligaments. Your face has ligaments that connect to the bone, connect from the bone to your face. This is how they do a facelift, is they saw through these retaining ligaments. These ligaments are in specific places within your face. Now, let's go ahead and back this up. Okay. Now, right here is a retaining ligament. It actually needs to be, so I'm going to move it right there in a bit. And that retaining ligament that actually connects not just to the muscle, there's no real bone in there, it's some fascia deep in there that it connects, and it connects from that fascia to the actual skin. And what that does is that means that, you know, your cheek fat is going to bundle up here. It's going to bundle up here. And then those two sides are going to compete with each other. Okay? And where are we seeing that? We're seeing that with a retaining ligament that's right here, jaw fat, cheek fat, and everything's just coming down this way and it's going that way. Retaining ligament is going to be right in there, in between, establishing this line in between these two forms. Retaining ligaments are super, super important. You're going to see retaining ligaments underneath the eye. That's a big one. And I've got that one at least decently placed. So the retaining ligaments underneath the eye here, they actually go through the muscle, and the cheek fat sits on top of this. And then when somebody gets older, their cheek fat droops down over that. And what's really happening is that if you look at the orbit of the eye, the retaining ligament has acted as an anchor. And so the fat used to be above it, but now the fat has spilled out over that. And so now then we've got our skin. And the only reason that we actually have that fat underneath your eye doing and creating that wrinkle is because, let's go ahead and draw it, is because you have this anchor from the skull to the skin that's pulling it towards the skull, and then the cheek fat is falling over the top of it. And that's one of the things that creates certain wrinkles, is these retaining ligaments. You get it down here, we get a nice divot. You get it underneath there. Our alar cartilage, or alar facial juncture right underneath the nose. There's a bunch of things that then support the cheek fat above it. And then the cheek fat will come down and create that nasal labial fold, right? All sorts of shenanigans with facial anatomy, that really complicate things. But what we want to do now is approach this from somewhat of an anatomical perspective, but also a constructive perspective as we go through and we try to build a head. So I'm going to, I think, today walk you through one of the big lessons that I'm still building for the facial one, which is we're going to take a face and we're going to start to deconstruct this face and then build the form back up and construct it back up from our simplified shapes, if that makes sense. So before I do that, because this was all this was quite information packed, at least I think it was information packed. What have you picked up out of what we just talked about? Tell me something that's a big learn. And I like to ask that because it reinforces in your own brain the elements that you just remember it. If you talk about it, you remember it. All right, I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go and reconstruct these stages a little bit. Durhoffman, fat, orbicular, and masseter. Ashton, that's what I want to know, and always am stuck in such situations. Ashton, I'm sorry, I'm reading this now, so which situations are you stuck in? I can't read that, it's Cyrillic, so sorry. I don't know what exactly causes that divot. You guys are answering that. Yes, thank you. Okay, appreciate the full thing there. Okay, Tony Stark. If you're really Tony Stark, you would know the software, so not sure how I can help you. Rocco, Marmoset, tool bag, Mare, Leticia, mastery is process. Process is power. Mike, the understanding of those retaining ligaments was all new to you. Great, Mike. That's so plastic surgeon language, retaining ligaments. That's going to help you do so much. All right, let's get in, and I think what I want to do, I'm going to start with a model. It's a different scale, so I won't be able to share these. So class, head, Head construction. Okay. Let's start with, if I bring this one in, do I get everything I need? I do. Sweet. Okay, that's not the one I want. And let's just go ahead and clone that. Just 1 second. Yikes. All right. We have our scan. Do you want some eyeballs so it's not so weird? Let's append some eyeballs. Yeah, can be weird. So this is the sculpt that we created, and the idea was we're going to make somebody of kind of like a universal type. And so we got all kinds of detail. If you go and you see the original, this will give you a sense of all the stuff I was thinking about for this course. But there's blend shapes. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff planned for talking about expressions and the anatomy of expressions. And so this model has like a ton of stuff already sculpted into it. So it's really neat. Oh, that's super. Don't do that, Ryan. So I like to work with this model. I want to build the anatomy of this model, and I want to build constructive elements of this model, because now with that all done and said, I'll be able to go and walk you through the construction of expressions, not just of the face, but construction of an actual expression. Now, we're going to deconstruct this first. So I'm going to go ahead and dynamesh this. I don't think I need anything. That doesn't look like it dynameshed. Delete lower. Why are you going to give me trouble? Oh, it's got layers. It was telling me I can't do it. Bake all. And I wasn't reading the warnings. Let's do 300. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay. Stage. Process. Process is your power. What's the first stage that you want to be looking up? Right? And go ahead. Tell me. What's the first stage? We already talked about it. I'm going to pull up an image. You tell me, what's the first stage that we want to talk about? Bum. All right, first stage. Anybody got any ideas? First stage. Teresa, the blend shapes look so fun. They do, don't they? All right. The first stage is the big forms. Great, why me? What big forms? So these are the big forms. The big forms that I want to start with are the 5 volumes, 4 volumes, whatever, the masses of the head. And it starts for me with Bridgman. Bridgman's the dude. He's usually very advanced. So this is great to see a concept like this that, we can actually teach. But this dude was teaching students who were at least as good as most of the masters we have today. This is back in the day when you could really earn a living just learning to draw. And today that's, you can be a concept artist, but it's different. Back then it was a pretty significant deal. More significant than now. And so anyways, very advanced, but this is what we're going to do is focus on these masses. So I'm going to deconstruct this model into those masses. And when I deconstruct this model, I follow a process that is that I want to stop and I want to talk about. So I'm going to go a little slow here, and I apologize for that. But it is important that we dissect some elements of this. So give me a moment to look at one video. think this is it. This is it. So when I sculpt a head from a sphere, technically I can say this to y'all. I'm going to brag. I can sculpt a head from anything. Anything. Start from nothingness. How can I sculpt a head from nothing? Right? Hopefully you've seen my Instagram. If you haven't seen my Instagram, give me a follow. If you scroll down past all the anatomy stuff I've been doing, a bunch of imaginary heads, right? All of those heads I can imagine because I have a foundation for my imagination. I have rules that I play with. Creativity is about rules. You're bending rules, but it's rules. I have a bunch of rules I'm playing with, and just this and that, and this form and that form, you know. And so I can invent because I have this that I'm showing you right here. I create simplified head shape. I then go in and I sculpt the masses. And these first few steps, I'm going to do it a little bit differently than I did in this video. In this video, I was trying to be more succinct about, I think it was, I wanted to show people the maxilla and excavate things one at a time. I'm going to get a little cray-cray because I want to work with speed. But this is always in my mind when I sculpt. I can always see this. And my goal for you is that you also get that into your mind. Z Station in Instagram, I saw him post recently and with this idea, and it was just amazing how much that helped. What I'm doing right now is starting to establish the block, and the block is going to go into the sphere. Okay, so I'm going to go quick because I think I actually already covered this. I've done this so many times, I don't know. But we're going to cut it in. We're going to cut down. Simplify all of this, and there you go. Bum, bum, bum. Cut down on that jaw a little bit so the volume, the cylindrical, upright cylindrical mass of the face. That's Bridgman's words. Let's carve that in. The brow needs to go back. This is not the opening of the eye. This is the zygomatic, right? So let's go. And again, you guys can see this in day one where I unpack this. I might even go a little slower in day one. I'm not quite sure. But the more times you see this, the better off your life and your sculpting is going to be. Stylized artists. This is something I learned from Mike DeFeo. Stylized artists, they do something similar to this 5 volumes. And so you got to look up old stuff by Mike DeFeo and see how he works with these simplified primitive shapes for the nose. Or Leticia Gillett, you can go to her Joy in 3D, I think, and you'll see some amazing stuff from her that's, you know, using these same principles of simple shapes into more complex form. I don't even want to call it complex. You know, part of the idea is for stylized and for realism is to get as much as you can from as little as possible. All right. This is going to be this form right here. I don't want to deal with that. This form right here is essentially just a cylinder. If you look at it from above and below, you should just be seeing a cylindrical form right there. It's the base of the nose, base of the mouth. Okay, but before we go too far, I'm gonna leave this here because I don't want to get into too much. You know what? Let me give you one more piece. Does anybody here struggle with necks? Anybody struggle with neck anatomy? Huh? Okay. My wife just sent me a text. I did not understand. Necks are very simple. They're cylinders. Everybody gets confused with all this crazy right here. Ignore it. Treat it as a cylinder. Sculpt the cylinder. This is one of the principles of my way of sculpting, is you sculpt the basic primitive shape first. Yeah, there. Even here, right? I'm not going in and sculpting all of this roundness. Humans do not conceive of curves the way they conceive of straights. Straights are infinitely easier for us to understand and for us to manipulate. Okay, what about all the crazy here? Ignore the crazy. This just becomes like a hill. The hill and the form tends to be heading down towards this side and then falls off at the back. The form should be, the apex of the form should be right there. Okay. And the front, this is just like simplify the shape, please. Okay. Bum, 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 na, 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 na. There you go. Now, let's get that a little bit more there. Now, when you have this simple shape established for a neck, the way to actually expand that and to start to do something more powerful with it is to know what are the pieces that I'm going to cut off. What are the pieces I'm going to cut off? What am I going to remove? What is the next move? Okay, process is power. What's the next step? I have a series of steps. Okay, one of the steps I do now is I'm going to actually start to cut away here in this area. What I'm doing is basically the trapezius thins as it comes up into the top of the head here, and then the semispinalis and the capitis, they all come out this way, and they start to show form. Okay, and so they pull on the sternocleidomastoid, and they start to make the sternocleidomastoid push out this way. There's all these reasons, right? But if you have a process, you almost don't care what the dude, stop it. There you go. Okay, and then we could kind of build some of that spinalis and that capitis as they kind of flow this way. All right, and right there, just in that little move, we've actually done the anatomy, but we didn't do the anatomy. We focused on the space around the anatomy. We focused on what almost a negative space. And then here, I'm going to excavate between the sternocleido and the pit of the neck. And then if you want, you can start to adjust some of these planes a little bit. Small moves. Then finally, excavate a little bit here. This triangle. And then you, instead, see how we started with the cylindrical base. And I'll do it from right here. There are muscles, a levator scapulae, scalenus. There's 3 scalenus. There's a anterior, medius, posterior. There is one other. I can't remember right now. Anyways, they're coming down. They're and connecting to the rib, the first rib, and moving up this way. So what we need to do is just create the bridge. And depending on the the thickness of the muscle, that's all it is. It's just that bridge. And then the sternocleidomastoid has its own that comes down and connects to the clavicle and then off to the races from there. Okay. Process is power. If you can figure out the process, if you can have a series of steps, then it works, right? We know today's day and age, we know magic's not real. Magic is a series of steps that redirect your attention and I just make things possible. All right, so I'm going to leave that a little bit like that, and then let's get up here to the top. What's the next form? And now this isn't something that I would do all the time. This is something I do. It's a form that's held in my mind, and it's what I would consider a training form. The training form is something you need to learn now in the beginning, and so that you never have to make it again. And that's what we want. We want to learn something, to do something, so that it just becomes part of our brain forever. I feel like that needs to really, yeah, that happened actually in the original. I carved in too much for the forehead. Pull this plane down from the corner. I'm not going to build the mouth. When I build the mouth, you'll see I'll do this. That's a step. That's one brush stroke. Does all of that. I'm not going to do that yet. Bottom of the nose. Bottom of the cheek. I want to pull the nasal bone up off of that plane. I'm almost at a very important part. The very important part, what happens in that inner corner of the eye? This super important. What we are going to do, and today on Instagram I posted this video and we talked about it day one. There's a line that flows down here and there, right? So that line that flows all the way down goes along the canine tooth, goes down, and it represents front, side, okay? That line now helps me develop, the maxilla on this side. Sorry, not the maxilla, the frontal process of the maxilla. As that moves up into the lacrimal at the top. And the lacrimal is like a little triangular dude right there. spirals in a little bit, but I'm gonna try to keep it a little plainer for you. Okay, and then the nose. Side plane of the nose. You got to have those elements. You got to be able to make that really quick. Yeah, that's no good. All right. That's the skull structure, right? Now let's go ahead and duplicate that. Leave that one alone. The next structure, and I might be getting, so somebody asked, Mayor asked, how do you know if you carve too much? Well, the way you know you've carved too much is you carve too much. And then you go back and you're like, oh, I carved too much. so you get yourself in trouble, right? Honestly, y'all aren't getting yourself in enough trouble. You need to, try and experiment and push what you're doing. That becomes a really important part as you get better, because your brain starts lying to you and telling you, yes, I know what this is, I know what this is, and your brain, and you don't. Your brain's just lying. I mean, your brain's lying to you 24 hours a day. We talked about this. So. All right. Now, the mouth. I'm going to pull and integrate into the jaw. See, I'm pulling fat down and around and filling in. This is the muzzle of the mouth, and I'm going to extend that mouth out here so it floods in to the jaw. Try not to, try to keep that nice and clean. And then we're going to put our structural element in place. I feel like I need to get a little bit more mass. So there's several ways that we build form. I think I'm overdoing it here. Sorry. Several ways that we build form. One way I like to usually build it is constructive, which means that you're basically sculpting a temporary form in there. Okay. Another way that you can see some people building form, a more classical atelier, is they build just the contour first. And so they'll build the contour, and I'm gonna do a simple version. And so then that might be the contour. And then of course we would build the contour of the nose. You got to build columnella. And then once you built the columnella, then you're like, oh, damn, I got to move that nose out. Then you got to build the procerus, right? And so there's a bunch of stuff that's like, oh, yeah, that's just looking wicked. Weird, I don't have that form correct, and on and on. This is definitely getting a little too far out. Because I'm building this constructive, so when you build this profile approach, you need to keep your model as thin as possible for as long as possible. I really like the hybrid. And so that's where I'm coming in, and my first step is to just create this planar structure. But what's really important about this is this line right here. It's called the marionette line. That's what plastic surgeons call it. All right, and so, of course, I do the line of the lip. Then I circle around a little bit at the corner of the lip, corner of the mouth. but I'm pulling down and I pull across. Those are all the steps that matter. Then I go and I define the vermilion border, right? Step 1, 2, 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Practice these steps. When somebody's learning violin, they don't say to them, just move it around and try to figure out the sound. No, they'll be out of a career by the time they're 13. It'll destroy their wrist. There's certain moves, certain ways of holding it that allow somebody to have a lifelong career doing something that involves something as unnatural as holding your hand in a certain way. So you have to pull from that. Learn the steps. Do the steps. If you want to get better the way I'm teaching, right? If you just want to bumble around, that's fine. I've been there too. But if you try these steps out, I think you'll be impressed with what they can do for you. So let's continue. Let me check questions real quick. Teresa, at this early stage, would you say most people's skulls are largely the same, only differing on age and gender? It depends on how you are looking at skulls, Teresa. But if you check, I think day 1, I think I show a male and a female. They're the same. Eyes are in the same place. They're the same there. But no, there's a lot of variety, at the level at which I'm looking at it now. Okay. All right. So I am going to... I can't tell if I'm comfortable with that. Hold on. I think that's better. It's not far off from where it was. All right, that's me being... If I'm being overly analytical, I'm going down the wrong road. Okay. Clay. Pull out from the corner like this. Okay, come down. This is a technique I learned, and I'm going to go from here, from the mouth, and I'm going to move in. I'm going to move this way. And the reason why I'm moving this way is because I want this to be lower and every stroke to build higher as it moves around and towards the top. This is a technique, a thing I learned from William Mon. You treat the side as a donut. I've been talking about this, excuse me, really long time. Treat the side as a donut. William Mon's a genius for this idea. And then you move like that. You see how that just naturally starts to create that shape? Look at that lower lip. It's like gold, lower corner. I am going to now come in here. The upper lip, you want it to flow in. So I like to have this line that flows above the actual lip itself. And so then this becomes a little bit, I'm going to have to actually resculpt. I'm going to kind of pull out from that. All right. So I'll do that again. Voila. It's going to be the alar facial juncture right there. Nice little triangle. build up the philtrum. Should be a nice plane right there, then into the philtrum. One fat pad, two fat pad, one and two fat pad. Okay. Now, does that look like our girl? Probably not. Right now I'm just trying to get a constructive kind of approach for you all. And then we'll go in and we'll make things kind of fit. I'll rearrange it a bit. One of the things I'm going to do right off the bat, I don't know if you remember, I talked about there is this shape right here. Okay, let's see if we can... Do you see how there's this shape for the chin? The form is diving down, and then it picks up again and rounds again right there. Okay, it's lighter, darker, right? And so if we come and look at the anatomy side of that, there doesn't really appear to be a lot that explains it, but that is actually what explains it, is that there's not a lot that's hanging down, right? And then this is cheek fat coming down, and then this is the masseter and the jowl fat. All of that stuff's on the back side. So there is this negative space right here that, if you're aware of it, it's pretty good to get it sculpted. Now, if you want to sculpt a female's lips, one of the things you've got to do is right as the form of the lip gets close to that vermilion line, you almost have to lift that surface off a bit. So let me show you what I mean. Those are going to be more feminine lips. They should come across as more feminine. I have some work to do to make it really work, but they should come across as more feminine than what we just did, what we had before. Let's show it. What do you think? Do you think it looks more feminine, or you think I'm just fooling myself? The most important part, if it looks more feminine, is that it was actually one move that did that. It's just one stage that made that happen. And that's really cool. If you know that, then it's just one thing you do, and now suddenly you've got more feminine lips. Let me check questions. Gnosis is asking, what's a good balance between fast sketch portraits and spending a lot of time on a portrait, going in depth, trying to understand every form? What's a good balance? What a good balance is going to be determined by your educational needs, so to speak. So are you somebody who's, you already understand anatomy and you need to actually start to I don't know, get better at inventing things? Is this the beginning of your journey? But ultimately, what the easiest answer is going to be that you need to. I'll stop this for a second because I don't. This next step I want to talk about it. You need to have your own balance, which means set 2 weeks aside and do X. Set 2 weeks aside and do Y. Right? You go to the gym. You have a personal trainer. The personal trainer is like, all right, you're going to work your backs. You're going to work not your back. You're going to work your core. You're going to work your legs. You're going to work your upper body. Right? So that balance depends on the goal. You need to think just like that and have your sketch days, have the thing that you're focused on and that you're diving into. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So it's not really about a balance that Ryan, that I can give you. It's a balance that you literally need to make daily yourself. All right, I'm going to fill this in. And inside the course, we break down the anatomy of the nose. I'm going to first just establish a little bit of filling this in. I don't want to share with you necessarily the anatomy. I want to share with you the constructive approach. And so there's a separation. All right, so we got Voldemort right now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build up the bulb of the nose, and I'm going to do that by establishing the Disney princess nose line. I don't need to be using the sculpting brush. This is actually a crap brush for this. But it helps seal in the concept. I think this is something I learned from Mike DeFeo. We can just give Mike credit. I didn't invent this myself. But this line is everything. That line separates side, front from bottom. Notice that bottom is not, like it's not just that. Notice how it's a curve. Very important that we establish that massing, right? And so once I have the massing, then we can go through and we can pull the nose out a little bit. The one thing I will say is let's establish a little bit of measurements. So let's say the head is 200 millimeters, which is about 8 inches. It's good for a female head. The nose from the base of that skull outwards, we want this to be about 25 millimeters. And we're doing good. So before we were a little light, now we're doing good. This always troubles me. And then also on top of that, notice like that's the nostril, out to the tip, 25. Cool. Now divide this into thirds, and that's roughly where that upper lip is going to insert. This is an idealization. There's absolutely people where that's not the case. And some people, the nostril actually would start right there. So there's a lot of variety, but that number will help you. Okay, let's go in and you see the looseness like of the plane. I'm gonna try to get that nose to be a clean shape. Oh, don't do that, Ryan. Okay. I'm going to make that a little tight at the bottom as well. There you go. Straightish plane. Voila. Okay. Now we can widen it as we need, but you know we're in good shape. And let's turn perspective on. And let's save this, shall we? So that we don't lose everything. Cimarron says, I have trouble with the cheekbones. Trouble with everything. Cimmerian, sorry. Joshua, when you have a high level goal of more feminine, how do you know when you're stepping into character territory? I don't. A lot of times as I'm sculpting, my dudes look like a lady. I go all Steven Tyler on it, right? So just be patient. You have to learn your own rhythm. But the most important thing is that you're putting mileage in, you know? You got to be doing the work. Why is this taking so long to save? Oh, the blend shape is like, there's a lot of polygons and a lot of stuff. Yeah, I can delete all that. I'll leave that. All right. We did lips, sort of. Nose. Look at that nose into that brow. What female has a brow like that? Not a lot. That's not something that's considered feminine. So I've got to alter that. And we alter it with a muscle, the procerus. The procerus kind of blends between the bone itself. And then let's just go ahead and get that. I'll probably pull that out a little bit more. And I'll get it a little higher. I can't remember where hers was, but it's all something we can adjust later. Starting to kind of get the brow. We don't want just one. And this is a mistake I make all the time. This needs to move much more out like this. Not cave in, but move out. Brow needs to move out. The temporal, all of these, they need to curve. But let's leave the nose like this if you don't mind. Let's talk about extending this form, right? Extending the cylindrical shape. And so that's going to help us get the brow. And so when I get to the brow, I'm going to separate out the superciliary arch, angle, frontal angle, external angle of the frontal bone, temporal line, frontal eminence. Separate the frontal eminence from the superciliary arch, but I'm working with a female, so I don't want a strong brow per se. These guys in this one that we did of our digital avatar, The form is much more unified right there. As we were talking about, let's pull that zygomatic. There's a shape right here you have to keep in mind. I talked about this last week, or on Monday. I'm going to build a little wedge for the bottom of the zygomatic. This is process. This is me slowly, before, like for a long time, I just left this as a simplified shape. Now I go in and I'm building these more complex patterns. Let's get the temporalis to flood in. And how much time where are we at? I'm making small moves, so something's wrong with my brain. And this is, as you sculpt, you just learn your patterns, right? So when I start to make repeated small moves, then I'm like either I'm low on blood sugar, or could be a million things that are doing it, but I have to be mindful. Like, all right, I'm starting to make mistakes. Is it a little thin? We don't have a female yet, do you? I don't think so. I think we're in dude phase. Coming from so much structure. Let's start to work on that. Rounded the brow, moved around to the side, and so now we've rounded this, got our temporalis. Let's work our way down here and back up, and then focus on the femininity. Masseter. Nice long, just one simple plane. There's a deep portion of the masseter, which is right in the back. There, thicken the lips. I don't like that form, and I see things in cross contours. Let me show you what I mean. The infraorbital margin wraps around and comes in. Mass does build here. This is the frontal process of the zygomatic. There is mass that builds there. But not like what we had. If we look at this from this view, you see like that was it was projected out and not turning in on itself like I needed it to. And I was losing volume. So I like to make sure from here to here, straight lines, right? These are always in my head. They're part of my construction process. Straightish lines. And the brow is still very masculine. So let's take that in. Anytime you have a ton of structure like this, it starts to really mess with your femininity. Okay. Pull that back a bit. I think I went overkill with that. All right, pull this down. We're constructing the jaw a little bit. We'll construct the temporalis. Get rid of any Adam's apple. I'm going to have that masseter just lose some volume right there. Okay, how are we feeling? Pretty exaggerated, but okay. Now let's get the ball. And we showed this yesterday. No, not yesterday, but we showed this day one of constructing an eyelid. I'm going to fill in this space. Looking at it from a profile view. And I am going to push a little further into it than I did on Monday. Why are you like that? It's super weird. But we can just smooth it out. Okay, there you go. All right, filled that space in. The eye is a good distance forward, which is what we need. There we go, starting to get some of that. Okay, I'm gonna try a strategy now. Okay, so at this point, it could go well or it could go poorly. Strategy. I'm gonna build the lower eyelid. By building that fat. Build the fat for the upper eyelid. Let's extend the glabella out a little bit. Running into this problem here, if we don't define this inner corner of the eye, then all of this gets really confusing, right? So let's go back. Oh yeah, all the way to the beginning, okay? And let's look, okay, at what was the mistake, what was the thing that made my life hard, and it was I didn't know where this first part was, okay? So now I can fix that. I can go in and just, that's the first thing, right? I'm going to be like, all right, well, that screwed me up not knowing that. Now I'm going to know that. And so I'm going to actually sculpt the beginning of that right there. And then I'll put it on this side as well. And this is why I have process. Because the process helps me diagnose problems. If I have a problem, I have a couple of choices, right? So let me put my face on camera as we say this. When you have a problem in your sculpting, there's a couple of choices you personally face, right? One, do you blame yourself? Okay. Two, do you blame the software? Or three, do you blame your process? And you make one of those choices, right? And a lot of times when we're first starting out, we blame ourselves. We're like, I'm not good enough. And that's why I emphasize process so much, is because if you are not good enough, frankly, you'll never be good enough. That mindset of I'm not good enough, it goes to you're never good enough. So you have to have a mindset that allows you to be good enough, but acknowledge that right now there's problems. And I always remember this story with, it was Carlos Fuentes. I forget who was telling me, maybe Andrew was telling me this. But Carlos Fuentes, a creature designer, amazing draftsman at ILM, was drawing, working on a project, trying to create something, and he was just getting really pissed off, right? He's just like, this isn't working. And who do you think he blamed? This guy draws like a dream. Do you blame himself? No. He blamed his hand. He looked at his hand. He's like, and he got angry at his hand. His hand was screwing up. And I love this because this is kind of a middle management approach to getting better, where it's like, well, I'm going to blame something. I need to keep moving forward. So if I blame myself, I'm just going to be corrupting myself. I'm going to blame my hand. And it's that damn hand. That's what's messing it all up. So, all right, guys, it's your hand. Okay? Like this is my hand that did this nonsense right here. I'm actually awesome. Today it's my bloody hand. It's just being an idiot. See how far off this is? Atrocious. Remember that there is distance. This Rafi, is here. And your eyelid starts at the end of that Rafi. So there's always distance between these component parts, and, this is really important. You think of it as three pieces. Don't take your eyelid all the way to the edge. It won't work. Now, if I've dug that in decently, I'll be in a bit of a better position. So see, I'm excavating. This is going to be fat that gathers right in there. This will be fat that gathers right there. And then remember that lower eyelid, it's distance from the edge. And I like to make sure that when I do that, it's below, it's subservient to the upper eyelid. In nature, it's different, but when you sculpt it this way, it just looks better. We're at 2 million. Why are we in such crappy? Oh, that's why. Let's freeze this. Dynamesh and unfreeze. All right, how are we doing? We're at an hour and a half, so we have only a few more minutes in which I want to spend constructing the dude looks like a lady. Oops. I can resolve that relatively quickly. And now one of the tenets that I have is garbage in, garbage out. So right now I've been sculpting just from my, imagination and whatnot. You've got to bring reference in. You got to start to bring something in that you can work from. So that you're not just an echo chamber of bad ideas. Okay. See how that extra volume we put right there, like how that made it look like a dude? Like, let's go back. That's a little bit more dramatic, and then now we're smoothing it out. We're getting a little bit more feminine in there. Let's look at the brow. Yeah. I think we're in okay shape, but we do need to extend this out. I'm going to increase the placement of that cheek. We're not far. It's looking actually really good. Let's take a look at the eyes. A lot of volume. A lot of volume right there on the side. Let's carve that back a bit. And we don't have any of this cheek fat here, which is really going to help the eye. I'm going to ignore the bone and all that, and I'm just going to work towards that form. You see how it's like it's a plane. I have the microphone in the way, so I'm over here dodging that thing as I move around. We've sculpted her with a thicker bridge of the nose. Which is really best seen when you look at it from this view. All right, we really got one more thing to do, you know, in the scheme of things. And that is for us to focus on cheek fat. Because as she is right now, you know, there's no fat there simplifying that form, which is augmenting any masculine qualities. So now there's all kinds of stuff we can do to look at the cheek fat. Let me see, where's my cheek fat? Did I not put it? Let me add cheek fat real quick. Huh? That's not cheek fat. Oh. Sorry. Scaled. That was the wrong thing. We need fat. Little transparency. Make them blue. Okay. So we got a couple of cheek fat pads that we need to work with. Okay, we got 3. 1, 2, 3. The fat pads, if you Google fat pads, you'll get something from Anatomy for Sculptors, which I think is just some of the best stuff that's out there. I've gone ahead and scaled these, you know, for my purposes right here. Fat pad right there. Try not to mess with that mid-cheek groove. You can see the mid-cheek groove. There's going to be a little bit of extra fat from the nasal labial fat pad. There's a little fat pad underneath here, but it's small. Nodule, the side of the mouth, there's a little fat pad right there. Some jaw fat pads, fat pad right here that we got to pay attention to. Okay. Careful with these big lines like shadows. So you see I'm coming in and I'm just going to clean up. I don't want a lot of shadows. Like I don't want a lot of lines. Lines that really start to like age this person. So I'll come in with depth. With the clay brush, I'll set my depth embed really low and just brush over the surface. Sometimes press Alt. And if you do it right, this is kind of a cleaning phase. You can also come in with the clay brush, or the rake brush, and you set the depth embed really low, like I'm doing right here. And you make a couple of, like my strokes are like this, and then they're around like that. So I'm carving in, I'm adding. It's a lot. When you're in digital, we have a lot more power than clay folk. Them simpletons. Dun, 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 dun. If something doesn't look right at this stage, most of the time this is going to be a missing information. So I need to think about this. I want you guys to think about is what's missing from your work, right? So like these lips look simple. They're missing me separating this corner and having a decent kind of plane to catch like that. So there's a line where really there's a plane at the corner of the mouth. You can see it actually on the other side. You see how there's that plane that gets caught? If that plane's not there, we notice it. We 100% notice it. You don't even know that you're noticing it, but you notice it. And you're like, something's wrong. Why does this look so simple? Just, what's the deal? Careful of the shadows. I'll use the standard brush to just create a shelf, but not those crazy shadows. Do a little bit for the nose. And I said this before, when you sculpt in the nose, don't think nostril. I used to do this. I used to just go in and put nostrils in there. You don't want to do that, okay? You want to put a shelf. You're just establishing a shelf. There, I think that's good. Get your Disney princess line. Get that tip defining point. From the tip defining point, build your volume. Those of you who are already enrolled, you'll actually know this is exactly the exact steps inside the course. We put that tip defining line, then we build a facet. Get that alar. Make that alar a little bit bigger. Hers is little. Yeah, there you go. Lateral cartilage. Careful. Concavity, we don't want. We want convexity. We want these to have life. So we want to push forms in and have them flood out from it. All right. What am I missing, right? You guys tell me, what am I missing? Start shouting out. Let's wrap this up. Sculpting is about solving problems. You're always running into problems. Tell me what I'm missing. Look at that space. So much space. Look at the shape of the nose. We totally screwed that up, huh? Too much. Drop that down a little bit. So one of the things that I'm teaching in the class that I personally feel is very important in the beginning phases when you're sitting down and you're learning all of this stuff is use your scans, okay? This is what I did that helped elevate me. So go in here and do corrective work. So look at the scan and say, what did I get wrong? And I'll come in and I'll just press Alt and I'll just move surfaces like, okay, yeah, look at that. Look at how much space we left. So we pushed that way too far back for our particular character. Now it's a little bit better. But let's go ahead and add some form. And so now what I'm learning is, what are the mistakes that I make? What are the common things, right? And over time, that's what you do, is you learn, like, oh, okay, I am always missing that. This is one of the things that just didn't exist not too terribly long ago. The prevalence of scan data is a recent occurrence. You can see the areas. That are still like a little, oh, I hate that it does that. Voila. All right, and then once I've done that kind of work, I actually go back and forth. What did I do? Now, in this case, remember we talked about middle management? So I'm going to blame the fact that I'm demoing. So the fact that I'm demoing is like that interrupts my flow and my awareness. And it looks like this entire brow area, I didn't stop and get that accurate. And that's okay. So now that becomes one of the most important things is like, look, I didn't establish the profile. And that's really the core of what's going on. The profile needed to be established, and then the eyes would have been moved forward because my relationship of the eyes to the brow was accurate. It's just this part needed to be moved forward. And that would have established and pulled everything else down and back. And this is our practice, you know. It's not just about learning the anatomy and learning the muscles when we work with the head. You know, it's being able to go in there and to see this from, you know, very specific perspectives. Let's go ahead and save this real quick. I'll open up another file. Looking through questions here. Sean, the frontal bone feeling a bit inflated. It was feeling inflated, wasn't it, Sean? But it was actually not inflated enough. Isn't that weird? That is just, it blows my mind that the thing that we think ends up being not the thing, right? And so that's a really important part of this conversation. Your brain's lying to you. So as you're going through this journey of learning, one of the most important things that I want you guys to have in your toolbox is one, you're using you're learning language. You're learning language from plastic surgeons, and you're developing a vocabulary. And then two, pull in the concepts that I'm providing, like the donut around the side of the mouth, and then get reference, right? Because garbage in, garbage out. So if you're your own pit of information, it's all coming into you and you're not adding any new stuff. In the digital world, this is our downfall. If you're working in clay, well, you have a model usually, and the model is important. And it's the same here. The model is important. Reference is important. Creating, something that, how do I say it? Getting real, accurate information from nature, that is just so impactful. I can't recommend it enough. And that's why we have the scans. And it's why I ask everybody, to work from this particular perspective, where, you have transform and then you have split. And then as you're going through and you're working on your piece, you're comparing it with what you have over here on the side. So split view is one of the most, I'm not showing you. Split view here is one of the most important things for you guys to be using. So use your reference, bring it in, turn on split mode, compare it. Start to practice your eyes. Use the side of the canvas to compare them, right? And then also turn split mode off and just compare here as well. See how close you are or not, to the ultimate form. And then over time you get this, all right? And all of these pieces were done in this exact same way, just, in a state of flow, where I was going through and building this in a way that it just was easier for me to get my head around things. Let's just show a few of these stages. And then probably that stage. All right. What do you learn? What's your big takeaway from today, team? What's your big takeaway? Go ahead and type it in the comments. I saw it just come across on the screen. So what is the big takeaway from today, where we are constructing the features, building the nose, lips, and cheek planes, and all that jazz? My big takeaway is I've got to practice a lot more. Yeah. That's a given no matter what stage you're at. You're always working. But here's the deal, right? It's not just practice. Okay, so when I first started teaching 20 years ago, I used to talk about perfect practice, which came from Richard McDonald. But perfect practice came from a football coach, and Richard McDonald's the one who shared it with me. And so I would talk about perfect practice. Perfect practice meant you did things the right way every time, and that is actually not true. The most important thing that you do is deep practice. There's a way to practice. And that is something you need. As soon as you're done with this, you go Google what deep practice is, and you learn the tenets of deep practice, which have everything to do with managing when you muscle through something and when you stop to figure something out, right? It doesn't mean do things exactly the way I do them. That's the problem with perfect practice. I told you to do it this way, you do this step. No. What you need to do is find a way that works for you through deep practice. You go through, see that you have a problem, figure out the problem, and then try to go all the way from start to finish again without problems. Okay? Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. The goal is smooth. So how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, right? How many steps, which you can count in ZBrush. There's an undo history. So just how many steps did it take to get to where you are? That you want to know. That you want to have a sense of. If it took you 2,000 steps, can you do it in 1,000? That's deep practice. That's what I want you guys to start to think about. And the course is kind of built around this idea with these exercises. All right, let's take a look. Work from big to small. Someone saying scans are a valuable resource for doing studies. Yep. It's all about planes and overlapping forms. Basics of structure is important. That's the big lesson. Awesome. Thank you. Then I have a pretty down-to-earth question about digital sculpting. Is it future-proof skill set? Dude, if I did that, I'd be making a lot more. If I knew that, I'd be making a lot more money. I wouldn't be teaching digital sculpting, right? If I knew the future-proof skills, I'd be a, CEO executive. I'd have a retainer at General Electric and IBM and Google and everywhere else. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody even knows if AI is AI. They know it's AI, but they don't know, is it general AI? Is it actually thinking? We don't know if it's thinking. We actually don't know we don't know what the hell these neurons are doing. They don't. So, I don't know, they figure something else out and now suddenly your toaster is sculpting. God knows. God knows. But those are the wrong questions, right? Future-proof, right there is the problem. You're living in fear of the future. You want it future-proof. What's going to happen to you when you walk out the door? You don't have a future-proof life. You get into a car. You don't have a future-proof life. Nobody's got a future-proof life. Solve that first. Right now, what we are talking about is you as an individual. What is your goal? If you're here, you want to sculpt. Why do you want to sculpt? You want to sculpt for a career. That's possible. Okay? But for me, sculpting is about learning to see. When you learn to see, like a sculptor, then you understand so much more about the craft of, illustration, drawing, even using AI to create illustrations. It will make you better to have the sculptor eye because you understand form. And that's really what I'm looking at, is understanding form to help myself tell stories better, to help myself create meaningful work. And then, is it meaningful to everybody? Is it meaningful to me? I don't know. I don't care. Right now, I just wanted to help you guys understand the language of form, which is a sculptor language. Yes, people draw, people do, but those are all cheats. Those are all fakes to create an illusion of form. As a sculptor, you actually make form. Whatever I do here in ZBrush, I can do this in clay. I can do it in marble. It'll take a long ass time, and I'd much rather be doing something else. But all of this I can do because I understand form, because I understand the sculptor's language, which is what I want for you. Yetkin learned basic block out of head forms with exaggerated shapes. Yeah. Awesome. Sen, big takeaway is when something feels off, it's not always too much. Sometimes it's not enough. Yeah. The big idea is get your reference in. Check your measurements. Because your eye's lying as much as it's telling the truth. You all know there's a black dot somewhere in your vision. You guys know that, right? Like, there is in your vision, there is a black dot that's always in the same place, because that's where the optic nerve goes back, so there's no sensors. There's no information. You don't see a black dot anywhere because your eye is lying to you. It's the matrix. It's the first matrix is your brain. What's that tablet you use? It's so wide. Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you. That's a really interesting point. One of the things that takes me so long when sculpting is I do it wrong several times before. Teresa, it's safe to say no skills are future-proof. Yeah, definitely. Gnosis, from my experience, the moments when I saw the most progress were when I discovered a new form in a study and then and I kept using the new unlocked form. Awesome. Don't simply trust in your mind. That's your takeaway. I'm Miguel. How are you? Yeah. All right, cool. Okay. Well, there we go, guys. This is, by the way, a Cintiq 32. Have an amazing day. I am doing this again tomorrow, and I am doing this Sunday. I am a glutton for punishment, but it's a lot of fun to get in and start doing live stuff again. Always hard to make good stuff. It's easier to do that when I'm all by myself, but always fun to be here and interact with you guys and to work on the delivery of, like, how do I stream one piece of information into another piece of information and make that actually connect in your brain. So have an amazing day. And I'm going to just show my screen real quick. And remember. Let's go. Where is it? Uh-oh. 2 days left, guys. Head over to kingslien.art. Sign up today, because it's almost over. And then it's gone. And my current plan is not to open up enrollment for this again for a while, but we'll see. Okay. Have an amazing day, guys. Bye.